Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to Reynolds Outdoors. As you can see in the title, this is a bit different video that you're probably used to because this is the first time I've ever done a video like this. So this is a Winchester SX3 that we have on the table today, but what I'm going to be talking about applies to the SX4, Browning Maxus 1 and 2, in Browning Silver, Browning Gold, and there's an FN shotgun tactical model. I do believe it's all the same internal parts, but I've not confirmed that. I've never worked on one, just hadn't had anybody bring me one to work on. So, but for sure, all your modern Browning and Winchester gas guns, all these things we're going to cover today on this topic apply to all those different shotguns. So the Winchester SX3 or any similar Browning gas operated shotgun. Some of the main issues that I have seen before, or where I would commonly start, would be where the gas piston is. I would check the gas piston, make sure it's not super dirty and dry and needs to be removed and cleaned. And that's typically where where a lot of issues lie in gas guns. And the next thing I would do, if I clean that up, the gun's still not cycling the way it should be, this is the spring, the action spring that is located in the stock. So if the gun's still nasty or still not cycling right, still a little sluggish, if it doesn't shoot, lighter stuff, which it typically will, if it being a gas gun, I will remove the spring from the stock, clean all that out, and of course take the bolts out, clean all the carbon and debris from out, and make sure there's nothing inside the receiver. Now, and once I reassemble it, test fire it again, and let's say it's still malfunctioning, which in this shotgun's case it was. The customer, a really good friend of mine, Quinn, shout out to Quinn, he did everything right. He cleaned it, took everything apart, was experiencing malfunctions. These are all old parts. He bought all new parts for the gun because he's put thousands of shells through this shotgun. So he wanted to put all new parts in it. Okay, and wanted to just have the gun run another, 100,000, 200,000 miles. So he went ahead and ordered new gas piston, action spring, and magazine tube spring. So not a bad thing to do. If you got a gun with a lot of age on it and it's starting to, malfunction, and no matter what you're doing to clean it, it could very well be the springs are too light or the springs are just completely worn out. You might need to replace parts. But he unfortunately didn't necessarily need these parts. The main issue were the buffers inside the receiver. Now if you're saying, what are you talking about, buffers inside the receiver? Well, I got one here, the old one. The other one I don't have because it was missing. But this one is the slide buffer. So that is in the top of the receiver, which rests about right around up top in there where the bolt will actually impact that buffer. And what it does is exactly what it buffers it. It keeps it from running too hard or slamming into the receiver. So if you're shooting a much hotter shell and the bolt comes flying back harder than it would with a low power 2 3/4, less than 3 grams of powder or 1 1/8 ounce load shell, it may not even, this probably wouldn't be that necessary maybe, or it would barely even touch it. But with a heavier shell, a hotter shell, they do need these and they do not need to be damaged, which in the case of this one, it is split. So I don't see if my camera will will focus. So it is split right in there, if you can see that. So it was not stopping the bolt from slamming into the back of the receiver. And like I said, I'm going to bring you in closer. I'm going to pull that apart, show you inside what was going on, what that looked like, and some of the marks that it left. Now, fortunately, it didn't do enough damage to, it didn't do any permanent damage. Nothing's wrong. It just has a few wear marks inside the receiver and on the bolt. It's fine. It's not But prolonged shooting like that with, you know, continuous slamming into the receiver, if it continues to cycle, a lot of times they'll start to fail, though they won't cycle properly, depending on the shell you're shooting. So yeah, it can cause issues. You crack the receiver, you know, just keep chipping away at the gun, and you know you're going to have a catastrophic failure at some point, or the gun's just going to, or really a better case scenario, the gun's just going to jam and not fire. So that way you'll stop shooting, hopefully. So, all right. Now I guess would be a good time. I'm going to take the trigger assembly out, pull the barrel off and all that, and go ahead and pull the bolt out so everybody can get a good look at the damage caused by the buffer failing and the gun firing and slamming into the receiver. But there's also another buffer, and I haven't talked about it yet, that I never seen this fall off before. This is a first time problem that I've encountered or had a customer bring in a gun that was experiencing this type of malfunction due to this buffer missing. And that was actually the main culprit of this gun failing. And I'm going to talk to you about that in just a second. But first I'm going to pull this gun apart and bring you guys in closer so you can see what I'm talking about. So, okay guys, all right. So I've got the gun pulled apart far enough to where I can kind of show you, give you a better idea on how all this, or what I was talking about earlier. So there's your gas, that's this new gas piston. And this is kind of this kind of works as, I guess, similar to how a piston would in a piston-driven AR-15. So the gas is captured in the barrel, and the piston is forced downward, and it impinges on this arm right here, which it acts as kind of like a piston. And then it compresses, and there's a little spring in there, which strikes or impinges upon the bolt. And then the bolt, oh, look at me, it's very, let's see if I can do this where it doesn't look so dumb. Bolt travels down, this little leg right here pushes on, let me get my light going for you. Let's see, you see that guy right? Yeah. The bolt rides in there, and this little guy right here, all the way up top, and compresses into the spring, or the spring compresses and then sends the bolt back forward, thus conducting the cycle of operations of the shotgun. Similar to a lot of shotguns. And the Benelli's designed kind of like that. Of course, it's only using inertia, not gas, so you don't have as much going on with, you know, gas pistons and as many these buffer systems. So let's talk about the buffers. Now I showed you that was the old one there, and the new one, I can kind of compress that and show you, or where that buffer sits. Let's see, that's too dark. Well, that's going to be too dark. So let's see. It rides on top. If you can see, if it'll focus, it's right there where the bolt rides in. It's at the top of the receiver, about right in here. So I guess you can see that. It'd be nice if I had another set of hands to you know, or holding the light, but that's where it rides. Or that's where it's installed at. It sits up at the top of the receiver. So it's about right here, and to access it, you just remove the stock, and there's a hole back here in the receiver, and you just push the old buffer out. And you could use this, you could use a screwdriver, punch, whatever. It's very easy to take that piece out, and it will not, I don't see how it could come out on its own without, you know, without you punching it out. So what that, like again, that's called the slide buffer, and that's what slows the bolt down or keeps the bolt from damaging the receiver. So what was happening is, if we can get that on, if I can get a shot of that for you, there is some wear. Oh man, this is going to be tough. Let's see. If you can see those shiny parts of the metal right there, yeah, that's a good spot. So you see that light, the shiny aluminum? That is where the bolt was slamming into the back of the receiver, because this was not doing its job. So replace that, super easy, and test fired it again, and it did not. It continued to malfunction. Now, let me tell you about the malfunction. I haven't talked about that yet. So the gun would fire, no problem, and it would not release a shell from the magazine tube and onto the carrier. Right here, it would not release a shell. So, but you could manually pull the bolt, or the charging handle back, pull the bolt back, and it would release one into the carrier, so you could load it fine. It was not experiencing that issue until you fired it. And it wouldn't cycle one, it wouldn't do it properly one time. Didn't matter what type of shell. And I was just like, why is this thing not working correctly? And then I realized, looking at the schematic, when I was trying to see what was going on, I realized that this buffer was not there at all. It was missing. So, like, I just felt like the biggest dummy ever. I was like, how could I miss that? But I've never had anybody bring a shotgun in. It was just always been there. Every time I've taken one apart, the buffer's always been there. And I knew it acted as kind of a spacer. I mean, or it kept tension. So when you installed it, when you install the trigger assembly back into the gun, well, what's going on? That's not want to work right. There we go. You kind of have to push in at the back a little bit. It just keeps tension on it. And without that buffer there, of course, it would go, there was no resistance, there was no tension. But when you put the pins in, there was the slightest play, but not enough to be like, wow, that's a lot of slop. That shouldn't be, that's a problem. So you don't, I didn't notice it until I realized, okay, that buffer's not there. And I put the trigger guard, or put the trigger assembly back in, and it had just the slightest little wiggle. I mean, very, very hard to notice. So I ordered another one, and I installed it using the Loctite super glue. It's supposed to be really, really good stuff. I fired it several times, but before I put that in there, I was like, well, I'm going to swap out parts and see if something, I was going to go start reverse, engineering in a way the parts that he replaced. So I put the factory spring back in it. The links were a little bit different because this, one spring has had thousands of rounds to it and the other one hasn't. So I was like, well, let's just make sure that it's not an issue with the parts he installed, because it wasn't having the same, the malfunctions got worse when he changed the parts out. It was still malfunctioning before he installed the parts, but it just got a whole lot worse. So that's what I do. I do just step by step. I try one thing that doesn't work, cleaning it. It's always the first step of troubleshooting a gun. And if that doesn't work, then I'll start exploring other options, try different shells, if it's doing, troubleshooting. So, but yeah, this buffer, and when I did, like I said, I replaced it, still malfunctioned, didn't change anything. But at least I knew that there was no more damage being caused to the receiver. But this little guy right here was causing, it just would not cycle at all. It did not matter what type of shell you shot through it. It was not releasing a shell, which makes sense. It's keeping pressure, tension on the back of the trigger assembly. So it allows everything to operate properly, to, move all the necessary parts out of the way in order. This little gate right here that actually holds the shell in. It's your bolt release, but it also, let's see, I'm not going to be able to, if I can get that light in there and show you. Parts have to move out of the way and move properly in order for the shell to be released from the magazine tube. So I guess when you're doing it slowly, pulling it back, it worked fine. But when firing, the cycle of operations was so fast, it was not allowing that little gate to get out of the way to release a shell into the carrier. And that's the only thing to me that makes sense. I changed the springs back out, works fine. Worked good with the factory, worked perfect with the new spring. And I didn't even bother shooting the old, I didn't even go that route. I didn't put this one back in there. I just left the new gas piston in the gun. Didn't have to go any further with the testing because the buffer fixed it. And that was the trigger assembly buffer. So keep an eye out on these buffers. This is a common one that breaks. This one typically, like I said, I've never seen this unless that adhesive comes off or just it wears out. Like in his case, it fell out of the gun. So that was the issue. And now it is, it is a type of hard foam material. So over time, they will deteriorate. These things can, like split, dry rot, all that good stuff. And there is a type of buffer similar to this inside of BARs that also help to regulate the bolt speed and all that, so it's not running too hard and doing damage to the gun or jamming up every other shot. So, all right, guys, I hope this video helps, and I probably see that I'm sweating. I have to turn my air conditioner off when I do these videos because it's so noisy. And it is May, almost June, so it is hot. But I hope this video, I'm going to move you out a little bit. I hope this video maybe helped you out in troubleshooting your shotgun if you are having some similar issues to me. But like I said, most of the time, I'd say 80%, 85, 90% of the time, it's cleaning, or maybe you're shooting too weak a shell. That happens more often with inertia guns, but I have seen it happen, in gas-operated shotguns, especially 3.5-inch guns. If you're shooting too light a load, it's not getting enough gas. Well, it's not going to cycle properly. So I love semi-automatic shotguns, and most modern guns today, they all work very well. Some better than others, but like I said, the SX3, this gun has a lot of miles on it, and I know the owner. We went on duck hunts, a duck hunt together, and that was my first one. I really had a good time. But he'd been on many duck hunts and all sorts of hunts with this shotgun, and has had great success. Loves it and wanted to keep it. He wants to keep it forever, so he bought all new parts for it. Fine, good. So this gun's going to run for, like I said, another couple 3,000 shells before these parts start wearing out. But remember, if you're experiencing a fire, or if the shotgun will fire, eject the shell, and you are not getting another shell released into the carrier at all, that would be the first part I check, that buffer right there. If you're experiencing excess recoil, the gun's running too hard, maybe it's malfunctioning, maybe it's slamming shut on that or getting jammed up trying to feed another shell, but it's not quite cycling properly, you feel like it's running too hard, more recoil than you normally feel, I would check the buffer, the slide buffer, and that's, again, up here at the top of the receiver. You access it by removing the stock and just punching it out. Very simple. Very easy fix, very inexpensive fix. Considering what you could spend on other parts for these guns. So, yeah, guys, just keep an eye out on those parts. Like I said, Brownings, Maxxis, the Silvers, same thing. Check out, keep an eye on those. And, let me know in the comments if you're experiencing or have experienced those issues, or if I didn't talk about an issue today, let me know. I always love collecting new data, and just that will help me in the future identify a problem with a customer shotgun. So, well, guys, I hope you like this content. I know it's a little bit different than normal. I just want to kind of give everybody some good data on taking care of the gun so they can get out there. I know it's frustrating when your shotgun's not working and you want to get out there and do some hunting or shoot clays or whatever it is, do some training. So let me know if this helped you out, and if you want to see what other guns you might want to see some troubleshooting on, some popular guns that I can get my hands on, of course, because if I don't have it, I can't talk about it, or can't get access to it. I can't get it on here and show you. So, Well, all right, guys, thanks for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, all that cool stuff. We really appreciate it. Thanks for sticking with us, and we'll see you next time.